This week we're going to talk about foot number 7, which is commonly referred to now as the fringe foot, but early days it was the Tailor Tack foot. So if any of you took home ec a few years back and we were taught how to tailor tack our patterns, you know that typically it was a big cross stitch and you'd pull it apart and snip it in the middle, and then that would give you the start of a dart or the sides of a dart, and you would match those up. And then for good or bad, they came out with the wheels and chalk paper, and sometimes the chalk paper left color in your beautiful fabric, and so all was lost right after that. It never washed out. So the Tailor Tack foot's been around for a very long time, and I do know that it's available in a few other brands. So they may call it Tailor Tack, they may call it the fringe foot. So check your stores for those items. And I'm going to show a few things. Of course, the techniques that I'm going to share with you actually come out of the Big Book of Feet. Number 7, Tailor Tack foot. Interesting. Different looking on the bottom. Has a big wide space. And it looks a bit like our new D feet with a hole in the back, but this is not a D foot. That hole is to allow the fringe to pass through from front to back. So I'm going to put that on. I've already told my machine what foot's on there. Dawn kindly gave me some funky pieces of fabric that I could use. Typically the techniques that I'm going to show you would look great on linen or denim or similar items, and we may you know, just enjoy the techniques on clothing. So couple basic things. You need a wider satin stitch that's going to clear the blade in the middle here. Maybe I'll just pop that off again for a second and let you see in profile how high that is. I didn't, my first time with this, I had no idea that my needle actually lifted as high as that blade is, but that rides right up the center, and we're going to zigzag right on over it. So we've got a sort of satin stitch setting for length, like a 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. And I've gone with a 5.5 width. And we're going to give that a whiz. So just simple. You could put a knot on there, but I'm not going to for this bit here. And for all intents and purposes, some of these techniques require that you use the same thread, top and bottom, and some require a different color thread in the bottom. So we'll talk about those this week up. So some of the fun things, we're going to just riff this off a little. No particular project in mind today. So the important thing is those stitches are still on that blade, so you have to pull straight out the back to get them off. And there, look at that. So you can see the height. There's a nice tunnel of stitches. I've got the same thread right now, top and bottom. So it's a little hard to tell where things are. Oh, and I did loosen the upper tension a little bit. So one of the things I've seen over the years is just texture. This could be cute as, oh, say, lion fringe on a kid's pillow. I just put my open toe applique foot on there. I'm going to change my stitch to straight on just straight stitch, nothing fancy, same as we always do. My machine would like to know what foot I'm using, so I'll let it know, and things will go better. So we can just simply stitch through the middle of that. This fringy stuff, this loose bit, it's quite loose, so can create a little kind of texture on a project. So if you're a thread painter, quilt artist, you might find many different uses for this particular foot. So right now I'm just making some funky texture. So this will hold. It's kind of got a little bit of looseness. You can comb it so it stands up a little, but simply texture, so you can make fun hair. Because it's such a loose stitch, and I've loosened off the tension quite a bit, it would pull out if you just left it on its own. So often it needs some sort of tacking. So one of the other fun things that's often shown is just an FYI, in your package when you buy the foot, there's instructions in there on how to do the good old-fashioned tailor tack, but nothing is mentioned in the package of the fun. So that little slip of paper in there has the instructions for making the tailor tack. So it's still useful for its intended intended technique. Now I'm going to go back and put the fringe foot back on and let my machine know. It's always happiest if I tell her what we're up to today. And I'll go back to that zigzag I had set up earlier. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you, I've seen in a couple different ways over the years. I've been sewing on my Bernina for a very long time, and different teachers have different techniques. So some of them will have this edge here finished. And this is a slightly heavier piece of sort of a red canvasy denim. So this one, put a little hem in it as well. And some people just will butt this up, line it up, and we're going to stitch the two pieces together. Alrighty, so we'll get to the end there. And again, straight off the back. Now we've got that lovely tunnel. You can see the height of it there. And then typically what we're going to do here is just kind of wiggle this apart. And this will mimic what was known as drawn thread work. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to just wiggle that out a little bit, make sure it's nice and flat. And up on my machine here, I picked a triple stitch. And what we're going to do is center that open work. And then we're just going to stitch in the middle. So I'm going to use that mark in the center there. Keep these centered between these two toes. Often people aren't sure where to look when they're sewing, and then they have trouble sewing straight. So just to be sure that there's no fabric caught under there, and I'm only playing with those thread stitches. Just going to hold that apart a little bit of tension left to right with my fingers. All right. So that part is done. And look at that. Little bundles of sticks. Somebody referred to it also as a butterfly once. It kind of does look like that. Isn't that lovely? So, and often you see this open work on linen. You'd see, I have a pair of pants at home that the leg is like this and then the hem is attached like that. So what they actually did was finished off the bottom nicely and the pant hem hung like that. They're quite sweet. I'll have to dig them up and wear them one day, show you. So some of the things that have been done, this is lovely on its own, and if you're kind of a more traditional dresser and you want to use that on a hem as a detail, it'd be fun. If you want to use it on a table runner, it'd be lovely. Now we're gonna, we're gonna gussy it up. I'm gonna put my open toe 20D foot on. Let the machine know what foot I'm working with. Then I'm going to go into my decorative stitch menu and I'm going to look for an interesting stitch to run along the edges. Now, sometimes if they have a flat side and then a scallop side or something along those lines, those are the kind of ones that work really well in this. The straight edge on those stitches is going to anchor this in even a little more, and it gives you somewhere to work off of. Interesting things up on my screen, I can see where the bottom of that stitch is going to be, and I'm going to just set my foot right there, and where I'm going to be looking is right at the tip of this toe, and I'm aiming for the tip of that toe to run up the edge of that stitching. And let's just play with this stitch. It's going to be a bit blendy because I'm putting orange on red, but all we want to do is hold this steady, don't oversteer, let the machine do the work. So normally we would do the same stitch on the top as the bottom, or the left and the right. However, you see this. I'm going to select pattern end. So when I get to the end of the design, it will just stop on its own. There we go. And interestingly enough, it stopped right where I stopped. Alrighty. Okay, so very subtle, but it's kind of like a skyline. The tricky bit will be if you want this to start in exactly the same spot on this side, you would chalk a line across. I'm just going to eyeball it. And maybe just for fun, because we can, I'm going to pick another one that's got a flat side and sort of a towering design. But it's a little more intense. It might show a little better. And hopefully you agree with me and you like it. Now remember what I always say, there's those of us who test and those of us who wish we had. So you want to check this out with the fabric you have, the colors you picked, and make sure that you have what you want before you put hours of your precious time into a project where you suddenly say, oh, I don't really like that. It's awful to put it in the bin at the end of the day. So end of repeat there. I did a couple repeats. I just want you to see. You can decide whether it's a pattern that you would like. Spare thread there. But it's kind of a cross stitch feel. And certainly holds a lot more volume than that first one. But wouldn't that be snazzy? And I'm just gonna put a pair of them on this other side here. And And I'm going to match them up just quickly visually. See what you think. There's so much impact when you have one on each side. And you could get some beautiful trims and braids. Some great details on the front of a jacket or on a hemline. This could be a peekaboo block, and behind there you'd put a different color. So you put the patterned end on. Remind me to stop. Look at the impact that would have. Whether visually it spends its life this way or this way. Maybe you just need a beautiful piece of trim for something. What if you were to finish those edges and then that could wrap around on something? It could be a ribbon. Could finish this into a decorative cuff. Make my own fabric jewelry. But I quite like that. So part of the charm is that open work. So try not to block that when you're finishing this piece. So that's an interesting one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Now there's another one, and it's often done on the edge of your fabric. So you'll want to finish your edge somehow. So again, I'm just going to fold that back. If you're using a fabric that's a little soft, unlike this denim, which actually with the 2 layers there had enough stability to take the weight of all of this without buckling. If you have a fabric that's softer, say you want to put this on a softer fabric, you can slip a piece of interfacing inside that hem, or a bit of stabilizer that's might stay in, might be removed later. So that original piece we did earlier, we're going to just kind of repeat that right now. Go back to my number 7 foot for this part. Be sure to tell my machine the truth. I know what foot I'm using. Certainly not smarter than me, but it needs to be fully informed or it doesn't want to do what I want to do. So, again, with that large zigzag. Now this is where you might find it a little handier to have 2 different colors, but I'm not going to take the time to switch out. It's Friday. We have places to go, patios to sit on, adult beverages to enjoy. So we're just going to do that same overlapping zigzag. I think I might have a catch up in the bottom tail. Yeah, there we go. Some days doesn't go according to plan, but that's where new inventions came from. So to just tweak that a little bit. And we're going to do it with that 1 inch. So what I'm looking for here, this is why 2 colors would have been our friend, is I'm hoping to find just the bobbin thread. And what we're going to do is try to pull that out of there. I have such a short tail. I'm gonna go longer. Let's do it. It's hard to believe that that needle is clearing that crazy blade. And remember, straight off the back, you don't want that to pull out. I'm going to give a good yank so I have an extra long tail there. So interestingly enough, one of these pieces is no longer necessary. So you could put a stabilizer in place here. And see, I've got that black bobbin thread here on the back, a little easier to see. And we're just going to gently pull that out and see if this works for me. It's a bit tricky. So see how that released? So I'm not going to tempt fate. I'm going to pop this over. I'm not going to pull them apart just yet. I'm going to put back on that open toe foot. Be sure you tell it that you have the 20D on. Always be sure to engage the D mechanism. And so this is the side I'm going to keep. You can see that that fringe stitch is just hanging on both sides, just barely. So what are we going to do? We're going to use one of those flat-edged decorative stitches that we had out earlier. All right, so I'm going to set the toe of my foot here. The straight line of that stitch is just going to hit the top of that fringe. And what we're going to do is use the machine to anchor. So that straight stitch is just catching the top edge of that fringe, because we have to put it down somehow. We have to anchor it for all eternity or it will pull out. And as I said a little bit earlier, this piece on the left is not staying in the final project. It's just part of the... And I don't know if you saw, but I accidentally caught that tail. So I'm going to just call this part finished because I have to back that up. But you know. Alrighty, there we go. So I'll show you what's going to happen here. We're going to hang on to this side. We're going to gently pull that off that side. Some people are brave and they'll pull that off and then stitch, but you could see how that stayed down a little firmer. And so I might not have, I could make a more full fringe by using a tighter satin stitch. But isn't that a nifty little stitch? Has a lot of movement. I'll show you on the screen what it looks like, because sometimes they don't look the same. So it kind of looks like a half of a firework. I thought it was kind of funky. Anyway, the straight stitch on the left hand of that stitch, just like these, it's holding that edge down so it doesn't leave. Because after we pulled that away, you can see these would just fall out now. But these are anchored in by that decorative stitch. So something to keep in mind. I've also done something similar in some of my appliques, where this was the fringe on a scarf on an applique. I would do a little bit of loose fringe. So in my typically very flat applique, I've given myself a little 3D boost. Just some new and interesting ways to use a foot that perhaps isn't seeing the light of day as it used to when Tailor Tacks were the big thing, and we made a lot of clothing, but a lot of us these days are doing more art, more sewing, quilt art, maybe fiber art, wall hangings, decorating clothing. So I don't see any questions right now, so it's near that time, you know, it's happy hour somewhere. You guys take care.